Most men will never embrace the solo dolo way of being, not because they are weak, but because they've never slowed down long enough to hear their own thoughts without needing to be entertained. When you start becoming disciplined, moving with intention, and stop needing constant company just to feel normal, your circle doesn't just shrink, it stabilizes. And that's when you realize solitude isn't punishment, it's clarity. It's the first time in your life where you're not performing for anyone. You don't have to adjust your tone or shrink yourself for anyone. You don't have to pretend. You're just being you without the world's fingerprints on your mind. That's what discipline does. It strips away all that fluff and leaves you with the truth. When you become disciplined, you don't lose people. You lose volume. You lose the ones who only liked you when you were distracted with the bull. The ones who only came around when you were available for nonsense. These people are the ones who needed you to stay the same so they didn't have to grow. Discipline exposes who was connected to your potential and who was connected to your comfort. Once you start choosing structure over chaos, peace over noise, and purpose over entertainment, the people who were only there for the old version of you quietly disappear. Not because you pushed them away, but because they can't breathe in the environment your discipline creates. But there's a difference between loneliness and being alone. Loneliness is when you feel empty without people. Being alone is when you feel full without them. Loneliness is a craving. Solitude is a choice. Loneliness is fear. Solitude is strength. When you're disciplined, you stop needing constant stimulation and validation. You don't need to be surrounded by people who don't add anything to your life. You start enjoying your own company. You start valuing your own thoughts and trusting your own judgment. That's when you realize solitude isn't something to escape. It's something to practice and master. Most men avoid silence because silence exposes the truth. When all of the noise fades, you're left with your real thoughts, real fears and insecurities, real desires and regrets. That's why so many men stay surrounded by people, not because they enjoy the company, but because they fear the quiet. But discipline forces you into the quiet. It forces you to confront the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Discipline will force you to sit with your emotions instead of running from them. Once you get comfortable in that silence, you become unshakable. Because a man who can sit alone with his thoughts is a man who can't be manipulated by the world. When you start embracing solitude, the world reacts. People will say you're acting different or distant. They will think you're cold and isolating yourself. But what they're really saying is, you're no longer available for the version of me that benefited from your lack of discipline. The world gets louder when you become low-key because your silence forces people to confront their own noise. Your discipline exposes their lack of it. Your peace highlights their chaos. And instead of adjusting themselves, they'll try to pull you back into the environment that you outgrew. You got to stay firm. Growth always looks like distance to the people who refuse to adjust. There's a certain power that comes with moving alone. You think clearer. You move like a man. You make decisions without interference. You stop second-guessing yourself and explaining yourself. You don't negotiate your standards. When you're alone, you're not influenced by other people's fears, insecurities, or limitations. You don't absorb their energy. You're not carrying their expectations and trying to appease them. You're moving to the beat of your own drum. And once you taste that level of freedom, you stop craving company all of the time. You start craving alignment and purpose. You start craving peace, which comes as you embrace manhood. When you become disciplined, you stop letting everyone have access to you. You don't entertain people who drain you. You stop giving energy to conversations that go nowhere. You don't have the desire to show up to places that don't match your goals anymore. You stop tolerating behavior that disrupts your peace. Discipline will make you very selective, not arrogant. It makes you intentional about things. You become protective, but not closed off. You're not avoiding people because you dislike them. You're avoiding people because you like yourself enough to protect your energy. That's what discipline really is. Self-respect. The biggest change isn't your circle, it's your mindset. You start valuing time differently. You're not in the streets wasting money. You learn to sit home sometimes and chill. You stand still and stop chasing people and forcing connections. You ain't trying to fit into spaces that don't feel right. You begin trusting your intuition and listening to your inner vibe. You start honoring healthy boundaries and choosing yourself without guilt. Once that internal shift happens, solitude becomes a sanctuary, not a sentence. You stop fearing being alone because you will finally see that being alone is where you grow the most. Look, a small circle isn't a sign of failure. It's a sign of focus. It means you're not desperate for attention and validation. A small circle means you've outgrown the need to be everywhere with everyone doing everything. You'd rather have one real conversation than 10 empty ones. Have that one solid friend than a room full of acquaintances. You don't have fear of eating alone sometimes without worried about what others think. That's maturity and stoic discipline. So basically, at the end of the day, your group gets smaller as you become disciplined because discipline forces you to grow in ways most people won't. You don't always have to have a woman on your side. You don't have to always have the best clothes or the best ride. Just stop making others happy. It forces you to choose yourself over the world's expectations. Embrace the quiet. Embrace the solitude and stop running people down. Embrace the version of you that doesn't need a crowd to feel whole. Being alone isn't a phase. It's a whole vibe when it's coming from a good place. And once you reach it, you'll never trade it for anything. If your inner circle is large or just still the same size it was last year, you aren't growing, period. Real discipline is lonely before it's successful. And for the men that get stoicism confused, it ain't about keeping emotions buried and pushing through pain without breaking a sweat, but about stoicism open to learning how to respond to life challenges with clarity and strength. And that includes emotions.